We are desperate to fight against climate change. If we don't achieve our goal to reach zero carbon emission in 2050, we are at risk of a global climate catastrophe. We rely on renewable energy to save our future, but our renewable energy is not reliable. Meanwhile, the world is transitioning into electricity, especially electric vehicles. The demand of electric vehicles keep increasing exponentially year by year. But with the increasing amount of electric vehicles, we will only see an increase in electrical demand. This will only make our grid even more unstable, since our renewables rely on storage to function. But what if we can turn this problem into our solution? What if we can solve this storage problem by utilizing the exponential growth of electric vehicles? What if anyone can buy and store the cheap electricity and sell it for a higher price? And what are practical challenges that hinder this idea? Our renewables, like solar and wind, are the cheapest source of energy. They practically tap into a free energy that is abundant in our nature. The problem is, nature is sporadic and unpredictable. This makes our energy production unreliable. We certainly don't want to wait when there is a wind to blow our turbines, or wait the sun to shine our panels, just to watch our favorite Netflix series, right? We need storage to create a buffer when there's not enough wind and light to power our renewables. V2G, or vehicle to grid, is one of the proposed ideas to fix the storage problem of renewables. The idea is simple. We use a bunch of electric vehicles as one massive batteries. We simply have to charge our electric vehicles whenever the energy is abundant and cheap and return it to the grid when the price is high and the energy is scarce. Therefore, EV owners can have a profit by arbitraging the cost of electricity. While doing that, they also provide an energy buffer to solve our storage problem of renewables. Sounds like a win-win solution, right? In theory, this just sounds ideal. With enough incentive, this might stabilize our grid and bring some profit for the EV owners. In practice, however, it is not that simple. To test this idea, first we need to know how much electricity we need to store. Let's use California as our proxy. We use California here because of the abundant data available for the public. To calculate the amount of storage required to stabilize the grid in California, we need to know the supply and demand of their electricity on a day-to-day basis. To do that, we just have to download all of the data, put it into the spreadsheet, and then analyze it. Easy.
A few moments later.
And I give up. That's a lot of data. Well, since I'm pretty lazy, instead of spending an entire afternoon downloading all of the data manually, I wrote a little script to do that job for me. Now with all of that data collected, we can look at the California average daily energy consumption. There is a peak and trough on their energy demand. Now, if we subtract this demand with California's renewables, we get this cute duck curve. This area represents the rest of the energy that is supplied with fossil fuels and imported from neighboring states, which is equal to 381 gigawatt-hour of electricity. Now, if we want to achieve 100% renewables, we have to fill this area with energy generated from wind or solar. Let's make it challenging. We're going to assume that we will fill that out with solar photovoltaic. Currently, 94 gigawatt-hour is generated with solar photovoltaic in California. Therefore, we need around 4 times the current solar energy generation to fill out all of this demand. Now, the California energy generation curve will look something like this. If we subtract this curve with the demand curve, we get this new curve. The area under this line represents a deficit of the supply, and above that represents that we are at the surplus or generating too much power. Now this area represents the amount of storage required with a whopping amount of 239 gigawatt-hour of storage. With that number in mind, we can calculate how many electric vehicles that we might need to add into the grid as V2G storage. Assuming 10% of the EV battery is used for the grid, with an average of 50 kWh for each electric vehicle, we need 47.8 million electric vehicles hooked up and ready to supply the grid. here comes the little problem. That number greatly outstrips the number of passenger vehicles registered in California, with only 26.3 million units registered. If we somehow manage to convert all of the passenger vehicles in California, we will only fulfill 55% of our required storage. And there is another problem. We forgot to include the EV load, since electric vehicles do not generate their own energy. On average, people in California drive around 55 km every single day. If you're going to use an electric vehicle for daily commute, you're going to need 195 watt-hour of power per kilometer. Let's round that up to 0.2 kilowatt-hour to make calculation easier. With 26 million EV added into the grid, we need to add an extra 290 gigawatt-hour of additional electricity. And we need to expand our solar farm a little bit more, which increased the storage required to 390 gigawatt-hour. This will bring the potential of V2G storage in California down to 33%. So, technically, we cannot rely entirely on V2G to stabilize the grid. But even a fraction of storage is better than none. It can act as an energy buffer during the peak times and can even replace the peaking power plant. But in order to achieve that, it needs to be profitable. On sunny days in California, the cost of electricity is already high. It is around 30 cents per kilowatt-hour during off-peak demand. For electric vehicles owners to get a profit, they have to sell their electricity during the peak demand when the price is around 40 cents per kilowatt-hour or more, assuming the policy can allow EV owners to sell at that rate. And if we look at the demand curve once again, EV owners basically have to sell their electricity during this time and buy it during the midnight. This precise timing is required to get a profit along the way and possibly free charging. But in order to do that, requires a specialized bidirectional charger that is programmable and can pump the charge back to the grid. This bidirectional charger in general is way more expensive than the ordinary EV charger because of the additional complexity of integrating an inverter to invert the battery DC power back to AC. Now the question is it really worth it? In the previous calculation, we used 10% of the EV storage for arbitraging the electricity. That 10% of storage, or 5 kilowatt-hours, is worth 25 kilometers of daily commute. That's a lot of distance traveled for an electric vehicle that practically stands still. Some might fear that this idea will cause the battery to degrade faster and render their car unusable quicker. And some argue that compared to daily driving that consumes a lot of current, V2G only uses a fraction of the current, therefore it will cause little to no degradation. To estimate how much degradation is caused by V2G, we can utilize this data from Dutch-Belgium Tesla owner forum that has been amazingly maintained till this day. Of course, this data doesn't represent all electric vehicles, but at least it's good enough to be a starting point. Here's the plot of the remaining capacity versus distance traveled. There is a clear trend that we can draw here using polynomial regression. We will use this model to approximate how much wear and tear is caused by V2G. In the previous calculation, we come with 25 km per day equivalent, or 9,125 km per year. If we plug this number into the model, we get 0.75% battery degradation in the first year, or 375 watt-hour worth of storage. That is equal to $75 per year if we use $200 per kilowatt-hour as the cost of storage, assuming the cost of battery replacement already includes the labor costs. Now, if we manage to get $182.5 per year by selling 5 kilowatt-hour of storage every single day, we would get a net profit of $107.5 per year. So, technically, it is profitable, but that might be too low to be a worthwhile investment for a specialized charger or a full-blown battery replacement. But this estimation might be slightly incorrect for V2G, especially for the battery degradation cost. The degradation from V2G might not be significant enough compared to actual driving, since V2G uses a small amount of current to trickle charge and discharge the battery. But to be on the safe side, we can use this approximation to estimate the upper bound of the degradation by using V2G. While this idea might not be able to fulfill the entire storage required for our grid, and there is a bunch of technical challenges of using it, it can still be helpful to utilize it. This will bring our renewables one step closer for grid stability, as our solar panels cannot generate electricity during the night or when there is not enough wind to spin our turbines. In order to reach 100% renewables, we need to utilize every possible technology to decarbonize our economy and reach our zero carbon emission goal in 2050.